Hello everybody and welcome to our first episode of Crafternoon Tea. So today I'm going to show you how to make your very own poppy wreath using some egg cartons. So we're going to focus on how we can reuse materials we've already got around the home, so you don't have to go out and buy too much. So first of all we want to make the wreath base. So I've got an old cardboard box here. I've just cut it down the middle so it used to be a box, and I just want to use one side of it. So what I've done is I've got a plate and I'm going to turn it down this way. Now, as you can probably see, that doesn't fit on the area that I need, but that doesn't matter because there'll be a way around this. So we're going to line it up and we're going to do it in two halves, which will make it actually a lot easier for you to cut as well. So I'm going to draw halfway around the ring of the, you can't see that. I'm going to draw halfway around the ring of the plate. Just a little bit over because then it's easier as well. So I've now got the first ring of the plate drawn. As you can see, it's more than half, but that's okay. I've got a cutting mat underneath. I've actually got an old chopping board, so you don't have to have anything fancy, and just obviously don't have one that you're going to use to prep food onto. So what I'm going to do now is, to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to rip off where it joins, so I'm not battling with a huge box the whole time. I'll put that down there because I might need that again in a minute. So I'm just down to this little square bit here. So what I'll do now is I'm going to draw the inner circle. So I don't want it too thick. If you think about how big an egg carton is, you need it enough that it's going to fit on, but not too thick that you're going to have gaps. So I'm going to probably draw it about 2 fingers wide. Okay, it doesn't have to be accurate because you can always shape it after you've cut it out as well. So I'm just going to draw all the way around. So you can now see I've got a fairly evenish, it doesn't need to be perfect. So what I'll do this time is I'm going to use some scissors. So it's a lot easier to do it this way. If you draw in a whole circle, then you've got a poke in the middle to get your middle out. Whereas if you do it in 2 halves and you stick it together, it's a lot easier to cut out. So I'm going to go around and cut it this way. Now, it doesn't matter what box you use, because as you can see on the other side, I've got lots of dietary instructions for biscuits. But it doesn't matter because you're not going to see that once they're covered in these poppies. Make your life easier and get rid of any cardboard you can. Let's go around this way as well. It doesn't matter if you're a little bit on the bend as well, because it should strengthen out when you've got the egg cartons on it when they become our poppies. So, as you can see, I'm part of the way through now. So I'm going to cut along this bit. Now, if you've got lots of cardboard, you can just go ahead and cut all the way across and then cut that bit out. But if you're trying to save, if you wanted to fit other bits in there, then you can. But I think with this one, I'm just going to cut all the way across because I know I've got more of the cardboard box to use. So it works to have quite thin cardboard. You see where that's not too thick? Otherwise, if it's too corrugated, you're going to be really struggling to cut it out. So I'm just going to go around here now to cut out the rest of my base. So remember, this is only half of it. Don't want it too thin, otherwise you're going to struggle to get your poppies on there though. Perfect. So that's the first bit. You see, it's still quite bendy, but when we put it together, it will be quite strong. And you can always double side it as well to give it that extra strength afterwards. Depends how you're going to hang it and what you want to use it for. So you can save that for a future craft project. I'm sure we'll use cardboard again in the future. It's a good way to make use of all those boxes we're getting on our home deliveries at the moment. See, it's not quite big enough now that I could fit another one on there. But if I'd been quite smart, I probably could have. So I'm going to get more of my box up. And let's see this time if it will fit in one of the smaller areas. So it will, which is good news. So again, I'm going to cut off, so I'm not battling with this big bit of cardboard behind me. Make your life as easy as you can. Ooh. There we go. Now we won't need any more of that today. So now I'm going to line it up again, and I'm just going to draw around what I've already done. Nice and easy this time. I mean, it'll be a bit bumpy because we're working with cardboard, it's never going to be flat, but you can go around and neaten that after. Okay, so we've got it drawn out now. Just pop that over there, keep as much room as you can. So I've got my other half ready to go. So I'm going to do the same as I did last time, and I'm just going to cut it all out. Try and keep as much of my surface up here free for the other bits later on. It's good to bend the cardboard as well, because then you don't get it keep backing onto you when you're trying to cut it. Perfect. So we now have the 2 rings for our wreath. So when I pop it down, it should sort of line up, she says. There we go. So, not perfect, but it doesn't matter. So you can see now that I've got my 2, so I've got a bit of overhang, but that's fine, you know. So I'm going to stick it together with good old-fashioned sellotape. So grab your sellotape. You could always put your scissors on there to keep it flat. And what I'm just going to do is I'm going to put it on one side and wrap it under a few times, just to give it that strength, and it should stay in place then. Again, it doesn't matter because no one's going to see once you've got all your poppies on there. So it doesn't have to be perfect. So I recommend putting it at the top. Just like that. And wrap it round like so. So now that's quite sturdy, but what I'm also going to do is just put it where I've got an overhang, so it'll sort of hang on to that a bit as well. Don't go mad on your sellotape, you don't need a lot, just enough to stick it. Okay, so we've now got our wreath base complete. So now onto the fun bit. So we're going to pop that to the side for a minute. As you can see, I've got a bit of an overhang there, but it doesn't matter. So I'm going to pop that onto the side because I won't be coming back to that until the end. So now I've got my egg carton. This is a big one, but you know, you use whatever you've got around the house. They can be quite tricky to cut. So this time round, I've got a Stanley knife. Just be careful when you're using it because they can be quite sharp. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut along this bit in the middle of the grooves. Okay, so you sort of need a sawing motion, and you probably need to hold it in both spots. So sorry you might not be able to see this bit. It'll be quite messy, but it's okay. Try and keep the egg cartons intact though, because you'll need them for the bits of your flour. So I've now cut off a strip, and as you can see, they're all still quite intact. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to divide them out because each of these will become a poppy. So simply we just need to cut along this bit in between, you see, just in the middle here, so that it'll keep it nice and even. Good thing with a Stanley knife is it's quite sharp, so it doesn't need much oomph to get it to go. There we go, and this is our first poppy, or it will be, not quite yet. So we'll do the same again. It might be easier to just bend them down, you know, squish them together. It won't impact you, just don't use too much force, otherwise you have some squished poppies after. The more you do, the easier it will get. Depending on the size of your wreath, will be dependent on how many poppies you'll need. So I've done quite a small one, but you can make it as big or as little as you like. So put my safety latch back on my Stanley knife. So now I've got my little flower that looks like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my scissors again, and I'm going to cut along the tops. Okay, so where I've got quite a hanging over bit here, I'm going to cut this bit off here. It might help to draw it actually, and then you can see it better. So I'm going to draw, so it's nice and even. Doesn't have to be perfect, just on a similar level to them all. So can you see? Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to cut along here with just some scissors, and we can always neaten it up after. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It will just help you to have them at a similar level. Okay, so you can now see I've got it in this similar sort of cone shape. Okay, so now to make this into the flower, see I've got little grooves which are quite helpful. So you can cut along those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 4 little snips. You have to bear with me because it's quite tricky to do this. So 1, not all the way down but near enough to the centre, 2, 3 and 4. So now you can see I've got 4 little slits in my egg carton. So you can plan them out, you know, you could have it quite flat, it's entirely up to you how you want to do it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go around and edge them off, okay, so they look more like a flower. So I'm going to do a nice soft curve, so I'm just going to make them less harsh basically. So can you see the difference now? Yeah, this one is the one I just cut. So again, I'm going to cut it like that, and I'm going to do it to all of them. Okay, try not to get too scissor happy, otherwise you won't have much of your egg carton left. And then as you can see, my egg carton has become more like a flower. Can you see? Okay, so like I said before, you can span it out. It's entirely up to you how you want to do it. I know it's not a necessarily conventional poppy shape, but you got the gist, yeah? So what it will look like now is with our wreath, we will stick it on like that, and we'll go all the way around. So you need to cut out enough that it will go all the way around your wreath. And then the fun bit, now we paint it. So roll up your sleeves for this bit. I tend to use a paper plate for my paint palette. I don't have anything fancy, but today I'm just going to use a bit of card. The card will come in useful later on, so you can use the bottom bit for that. So what I'm going to do now is I've just got some acrylic paint, but you can also use poster paint. I like to use those paints because they dry quite quickly. And you can pick this up for about £2 if you don't have any indoors. So I've got my paintbrush as well, and what I'm just going to do is I'm going to cover the entire egg carton in red for the poppies. Try and cover as much as you can because you don't want to have the colour of the egg carton underneath. It's already starting to take good shape. So you're going to want to do the inside and the outside. So at the moment, don't worry about it being everywhere, because we can add our black for the poppy later on. So getting all the nooks and crannies. So you might have to do this in stages because obviously it's going to be wet on the inside now. So you want to go back afterwards and do your outside. There we go. So that's covered as much as I'm probably going to get it. On the inside. Can you see? So don't pinch it too much because you'll lose all the shape. But the good thing is you can keep pulling them backwards and forwards. So there's our beginning of our poppy so far. So I'm going to leave that to dry for a second. I haven't planned this as far forward as Neil Buchanan from Art Attack, so you have to bear with me. So I'm going to pop that down, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a little banner for the middle of my wreath. So what I'm going to do is the same piece of card that is my paint palette, be very careful that you don't end up getting lots of paint on your hands, is I'm going to cut a banner that's as thick as I want it. So I'm probably going to make it about 3 fingers thick. So I'm just going to cut it with freehand, but you can use a ruler if you're not as confident. And I'm just going to cut it all the way across, because then I can cut it down after. If you don't have any card, you can use paper, you could use a bit of cardboard and paint it if you wanted to give it a colour. It's entirely up to you. And it doesn't have to be a perfect straight line because mine is a bit wonky. So as you can see, this is how it's going to look in the middle in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just stick it down with our good old friend sellotape again. So I'm going to stick it on each side. So you can see here, I'm just going to put it across so that the cardboard and the card meet together, and then I'll neaten up the edge afterwards. I'll get rid of this bit. So that should hold enough for what you need it for. And I'm going to do the same to the other side. There we go. So that's now stuck on. So this is the back and this is the front. For our London viewers, it might look like a tube map to you. And then we're going to just cut the edges off now. It's quite hard to get all your hand movements when you're doing it on a camera, but I'm just going to cut along now. It's easier to cut once you've done it because now you know what it's going to, you can get that flush edge. You see it's gone? And on this side. So while I'm waiting for my poppies to dry, I've got a permanent marker, but you could just use a pen depending on how thick you want it to look. I'm going to write a little message in the middle, so I'm going to put, we will remember them. So you can write out in pencil first if you're not as confident, or you can do it just freehand straight away. It's always hard to know your spacing because you don't want to have big gaps at one end. So we will remember them. Perfect. So that's how it will look in the centre. So you can make it bigger, you can use certain fonts, you can use a stencil. It's entirely up to you how you want to do it. So my poppy should be dry enough now. So I'm just going to, still a bit damp, but it does dry quite quickly. That's why I like acrylic paints. But make sure you wash out your paint brushes, otherwise they're going to end up really hard and you won't be able to use them again. So I'm just going to go back and do the other side of the egg carton now. It's quite fragile, as you can see. I'm not putting much pressure, but it's already caving in. But don't be afraid to get it all over your hands. You know, this is our Crafternoon Tea. So So we're meant to get messy. It's part of the fun with crafts. So I'm literally going to cover every surface in red. It's quite hard because this is quite textured, so as you can see, I'm already getting it all over my hands. There we go. So make sure you get right in there. You don't want to have any cardboard gaps, otherwise it will look a bit odd. You could decoupage if you enjoy doing decoupage, where you get bits of paper. If you had the red paper, and you could stick it all over to give it a different texture. You know, get creative, do as much as you can. See, this is the problem when you haven't dried it fully. That's okay. Part of the process, huh? You could leave it near a radiator to dry quicker if you're in a bit of a hurry, or you could make it span over the whole day. Entirely up to you, at your own pace. Ooh. So now we're covered inside and out in red. So I'm just going to leave that probably face down this time. I'm going to put on my card so I don't ruin this chopping board, because I might want to use it again in the future for different crafts. Then I've got some black paint. Oh no, I just dropped my wreath and I just got some red on it. But hey, it adds to the handmade, right? I'm going to put it that side so it won't drop this time. Okay, so I won't need too much black paint because we're literally just going to do the centre. So, as you can see, I'm just painting the base. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm taking off more red paint than I've put on at this rate, but you can go back over it after. So there we go. Can you see? So join me again in a few seconds and I'll show you how to put your wreath together. Welcome back. So now that I've covered all my poppies and my hands in red paint, I haven't gone around the outside just for quickness and time, but cover both sides really, because then you get a better effect. So this is how your poppy will look up close. So you can cut them in different, this one's done on both sides, and you can cut them in different ways for different effects. This one's a slightly larger egg carton. So just, you know, play around with size and stuff like that. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to move these off my board so that I can start sticking them to my wreath. So you can either use PVA, but I've got a glue gun because it will hold them in place a lot easier. Just be careful because glue guns get so hot and you don't want to end up burning yourself, because that really does hurt. So plug your glue gun in and leave it to heat up. And then once it's ready, you can start gluing your poppies on to your wreath. So it's entirely up to you how you want to space them out. I'm going to put some of my bigger ones at crucial places, and you can sort of fold them out. I quite like the closed cup, but you can sort of make them more open. It's entirely up to you. So I have got 3 big ones, so I'm going to put them in some of the corners. And then what I'm going to do is put my little ones around it. So you can lay it out to begin with if you want, so you know exactly where you're going. You can have them really close together, or you can have gaps between them. It's entirely up to you what kind of feel you want to have. But yeah, just play around with it, be creative, you know, it doesn't have to look a certain way. So I'm just getting them all popped on. And then when I've glued it down, I will show you the finished product. So I've got too many, but that's fine. I can always scooch them a bit closer, or it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it looks good. Okay, so my glue gun should be nice and hot by now. Just be really, really careful you don't burn yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop a bit of glue onto the base, just a circle's enough, and you're going to get lots of this string in, because that's what glue guns do best. So just pop it on there, hold it for a few seconds, and that will stick it down. If you've got PVA, it's going to be a lot more slippery, just because that's what PVA is like. So again, pop it onto the bottom. You don't need much, otherwise it's just going to squidge out all at the bottom, and you don't really want that. So it doesn't matter if you can see your cardboard underneath. I think it's quite a nice effect actually. So we're just going to go all the way around and pop our poppies everywhere. Ooh, I keep getting bits of old egg carton stuck. There we go. So as you go on, your glue gun gets hotter, the glue will come out a lot easier and a lot quicker. So just be mindful. You won't need as much because it will just squirt out. And as I'm going around, I'm making them a bit closer because I've got 3 extra little egg cartons, so why not? Might as well make use of them. So my egg cartons are still a little bit wet. So ideally you want to wait until they're all dried before you start doing this, but otherwise some of the paint will come off. So just stick them down, and then once they're stuck you can play around with the petals and pull them out further if you'd like, or keep them closed cut. So I've got one more space, so I'm going to use this little one to stick it in and pop it down. There we go, perfect. So I'm just going to unplug my glue gun, otherwise it will continue to ooze out glue. Perfect. So this is my wreath complete. So now the moment of truth, they could all slide off because it could not be set yet, and what you can do is to make it hangable, you could have a little bit of string or twine or anything that you've got laying around the house. Dot glue on either side on the back with the glue gun, and then you'll have a nice little hoop that you can have it hanging. So I've got all these little bits of stringy glue which you'll go through after and tease off. That's what happens with a glue gun, it tends to string back. So, and there we have it. One poppy wreath made out of egg cartons. Cool, huh? There's a little close-up. There you go. So get making and have a little poppy wreath of your own that you can hang in your window and enjoy. See you next week. Bye.